1 month ago, in the most blatant example of witness tampering so far in Donald Trump's cover-up of his Epstein scandal, we saw Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche head down to Tallahassee, not just to interview Ghislaine Maxwell, but to act as Donald Trump's personal attorney, extracting whatever he could out of Maxwell in her attempt to get a pardon and Donald Trump's attempt to save himself. We have known that this was a setup from the beginning, but that did not stop it from hurting Donald Trump, because the transcripts of this interview just went public and they are blowing up Donald Trump's Epstein scandal. We are going to get into it all, but before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button, because it goes a long way in supporting our work. Now, before we can get into what was released in this newly public transcript, I want to start with the context of what led up to this event, what happened after, and why it is so important to what Ghislaine Maxwell said, and that's coming to us from Lawrence O'Donnell.
The Trump White House is leaking the possibility through various news agencies that a transcript will be released of Todd Blanche's interview with Ghislaine Maxwell. There is no possibility that that transcript will include all of Todd Blanche's communication with Ghislaine Maxwell and her criminal defense lawyer, who is a personal friend of Todd Blanche. As Donald Trump kept rambling about Todd Blanche, and the reporter kept asking, but what about her? Donald Trump ignored that question, what about her, and didn't say a word about Ghislaine Maxwell. This time, Donald Trump did not say, I wish her well, which Donald Trump has said before about the woman who was convicted of recruiting children to have sex with Jeffrey Epstein and sexually abusing those children herself. Tonight, ABC News is reporting, quote, during her 9 hours speaking with Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche last month, Ghislaine Maxwell said nothing during the interview that would be harmful to President Donald Trump, telling Blanche that Trump had never done anything in her presence that would have caused concern, according to sources familiar with what Maxwell said. That was obviously the mission Donald Trump's criminal defense lawyer embarked on: get Ghislaine Maxwell to say nothing that would be harmful to Donald Trump. And then Ghislaine Maxwell immediately got transferred from a serious federal prison in Florida, meant to house, among others, sex criminals, to the easiest federal custody facility that exists in America for women, which is not meant to house sex criminals like Ghislaine Maxwell. The rules had to be changed by Donald Trump's Justice Department to get Ghislaine Maxwell into that much more pleasant facility that is located in Texas near members of her family. Ghislaine Maxwell's lawyers lied today in a motion opposing the release of grand jury testimony in her case. The lawyers made the legitimate point that I've made on this program, that Ghislaine Maxwell's appeal is still pending before the United States Supreme Court. So grand jury transcripts should not be unsealed in a case that could conceivably go back for a retrial. That is a serious legal point. But the lawyers went beyond that and claimed that Ghislaine Maxwell is a scapegoat. That was their word. And that's the word that they want out there about Ghislaine Maxwell.
We knew that this was a setup from the beginning. We knew that Donald Trump was after any information he could extract out of Ghislaine Maxwell, someone who is known to lie under oath so Trump could protect himself and Maxwell could try to get a pardon. And that is exactly what we saw with the first piece of information we saw released from these transcripts, but it didn't stop there. And although this might help Donald Trump, what happens next certainly will not. In the transcript, Ghislaine Maxwell said, Trump was always very cordial and very kind to me, and I just want to say that I admire his extraordinary achievement in becoming the president now, and I like him, and I've always liked him, so that is the sum and substance of my entire relationship with him. That's it, Ghislaine? That's all you can remember, is that you like him and you really admire Mr. Trump? Oh, dear leader Trump, you're such a great president. Please pardon me. That's it, Ghislaine? Well, that's actually not it. Because in an attempt to distract, in an attempt to cover up the scandal, in an attempt to get us to move on, This was the biggest mistake that Donald Trump could possibly make, because Ghislaine Maxwell just made another shocking admission that is blowing up in Trump's face.
Well, in just a few minutes, Martha, we've been looking through this, and we can tell you the top line here is that there's no client list, according to Ghislaine Maxwell, and there are no high-powered individuals that were on any sort of list. She did not incriminate anybody in that 9-hour interview that she did with the Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. She said right here, quote, "There is no list. We'll start with that. The genesis of that story I can actually trace for you is from its absolute inception, if that is what you're interested in. That's part of the DOJ transcript."
Maxwell also says that she doesn't believe that Epstein took his own life. So there's no client list, and Epstein didn't take his own life in prison. So that just opens up more conspiracies. Pam Bondi told us there was a list. J.D. Vance did, Kash Patel did, Donald Trump did, and now Ghislaine says there isn't. Now, of course, she's only saying this because she wants a pardon from Donald Trump, but how can we trust anyone at this point? That is the fatal flaw of Donald Trump's attempts to cover up, is that he is only creating more questions and more conspiracies by doing so. Donald Trump is creating a worse image in the imagination of MAGA than possibly anything he could have done with Epstein, which, considering that I think he probably committed some pretty disgusting crimes, I'm not sure that's the case. But the MAGA imagination is running wild, wondering what Donald Trump did, what he didn't do, who he didn't help, what he didn't speak up about. That is what is happening right now. Donald Trump has only created more controversy and more conspiracy in MAGA world because he continues to deny, and we know nothing. All we know is that Ghislaine is saying one thing, and Trump and the rest of his administration is saying something completely different. They are only giving this more attention. It was the biggest mistake that Donald Trump made. Of course, he's going to flaunt Ghislaine Maxwell saying that he's a great guy and she's so impressed that he's president as the get out of jail free card with him, but it doesn't do that. We know this is a setup, and we know Ghislaine Maxwell is willing to perjure herself. She is a criminal. This is not an honorable witness. This is not someone whose word we should trust. This is not someone who should have been moved to a nicer prison closer to her family. But of course, that's all part of the deal. And Jamie Raskin broke that down right here.
Look at the bizarreness of this situation. Sex offenders are not allowed in that Texas camp, which I've heard referred to as Club Fed. So she gets a transfer from a prison in Tallahassee to a minimum security camp pretty much instantaneously overnight after she's visited by Todd Blanche, who was Donald Trump's personal criminal defense lawyer just 10 months ago. And he liked what he heard from her, Donald Trump's former defense lawyer, who's now deputized over at the Department of Justice. And he's apparently arranged for this transfer. Now, even for people who are allowed to be transferred, normally that's a process that takes months. You've got to demonstrate why there's some compelling reason you need to be moved from one facility to another, a change in the facts of your case or a change in the law. And then even if you're granted the permission to switch, it generally takes months to get off the wait list. Well, she bypassed that entire process and is just moved over to that facility. Obviously, the administration is sending the message to her that she will be rewarded for the proper cooperation. Blanche liked what he heard her saying in terms of Donald Trump, and we know that's all they've been concerned about. They're not concerned about the victims. They're not concerned about ongoing sex abuse trafficking, if there's any that's taking place. What they're concerned about is Donald Trump, because they had an army of more than 1,000 FBI agents working around the clock, searching for any mention of Donald Trump's name or any photograph or any video glimpse of him in all of these documents. So we want everything turned over. Like Donald Trump, we're demanding of the Epstein file, and we want a transcript and the original recording of all of his interviews with her, because they sacked one of the attorneys who had been on that case for a long time. He didn't bring any of the line prosecutors with him, and Todd Blanche engaged in that questioning or that conversation totally on his own.
It is beyond disgraceful the way that Donald Trump and the members of his administration have acted. This is a truly abhorrent and gross way that they have behaved in an effort to distract, to cover up, to change the narrative, to elicit testimony through nefarious means. That is what is happening right now. And we all see it. And that's the biggest problem for Donald Trump, is that he can't escape the creation of conspiracies, especially on the right. And at this point, they are not wacky, tinfoil-hatted, nutso, weird corner of the internet conspiracies. If Donald Trump says there's a list and Ghislaine Maxwell says there isn't, but Donald Trump says we have to trust Ghislaine Maxwell on him being a swell guy, well, why don't we have to trust her on saying that there was no list? What do we trust? Donald Trump is just creating more problems for himself and at the same time exposing that there are still more documents left. That while Donald Trump is pretending he's all about accessibility, that this is the most transparent administration in history, what are they still covering up? That's what George Conway asked right here.
I see it exactly the same way. I don't think they'd be releasing this if they thought it was in some way harmful to Donald Trump. I think she had every reason to downplay any involvement that Donald Trump had in anything she was involved with. And I do think, I think the real question is, what's in the documents that they haven't produced? I mean, I also am suspicious for much the same reason that we're not going to see all the documents. I mean, they had FBI agents reviewing these documents for weeks on end. There's a massive trove of these documents. And, one of the things that happens in litigation and investigations is you don't actually know what you're not getting unless you are asking lots of questions in an adversarial fashion. And as we know, this committee is not going to be adversarial to the President of the United States. Yeah, I mean, that's the real question is, was the release of this, were the selection of these documents selective? And that's the question. I mean, are they withholding documents that might refer to him or things that are embarrassing to him, and producing documents that refer to other people in order to distract? And I wouldn't put it past them that they would do that.
They didn't.
What is this administration not showing us? That is the question we have to ask because of Trump's cover-up. Because Donald Trump has gone to these lengths, he is only creating more conspiracies. But we are going to continue to ask these questions. We are going to continue to talk about this. And it is no surprise on the same day that Robert Garcia in the House Oversight Committee gets the Epstein files that this goes public. I think that's intertwined. And we're going to continue to call that out. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video, and if you stuck around to the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.